I'm not a huge fan of Battle Royales. I think they're boring, repetitive, and doesn't really have that much substance, especially with the shooter ones. It's just picking your drop point and hoping to the RNG gods that the place you landed into got good loot or whatnot. I just don't like it. I also suck at the game. One can be a reason for the other and totally works vice versa. A friend of mine also recently described Battle Royales perfectly. They're only good for 10 rounds. And I agree. I'm also not a huge fan of MOBA games. Battle Royales and MOBAs are pretty much the same in essence, except there's a lot less RNG involved in the latter and gravitates more towards the player's skills. I play some League of Legends with my friends and I played the first Dota back in Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne, but it's not a genre that I usually play religiously like say an MMORPG or the current gacha games that I play. But with all that said, I find it surprising that I enjoy playing this game that combines both genre. Everyone, meet Eternal Return Black Survival. Eternal Return Black Survival is a hybrid MOBA battle royale game developed by Nimble Neuron, a company hailing from South Korea. This game is actually kind of a spin-off of another game by the same developers with the same title, Black Survival. I haven't played the first game, let alone heard of it before I got introduced to the game by the same friend that perfectly described battle royales, but I'll link Nimble Neuron's Steam page and their official website down in the description so you can check them out. Anyways, in this game, you get to choose a survivor to play as and try to survive on Lumia Island alongside 17 other survivors. Scour the area to gather materials and weapons, and use your survivor's innate skills to kill other survivors and emerge to the top. Pretty standard Battle Royale stuff. But what I like about Eternal Return over other Battle Royales is that it doesn't rely that much on good RNG. It pretty much works out as a typical MOBA. Instead, this time there are only neutral crypts and there's no item shop to buy items and potions from. You roam the island from area to area to scavenge materials that you can use to further strengthen your survivor. As of writing this script, there are currently 22 characters available, each having their own unique sets of skills and different types of weapons to choose from. You fight against other players as you would in MOBAs like League or Dota 2, minus the turrets and infinitely spawning team minions, as mentioned earlier. You get starting items in the form of a weapon, 2 pieces of bread, and a bottle of water. And it's up to you to either replace them with something else that your survivor can also use, more on that later, or upgrade them to their maximum tier by looking for the right materials. The item system works in favor of battle royales where you can only equip one piece of equipment per body part. Unlike MOBAs where you can equip not only a sword but also a gun for some reason even if your character uses a bow, Eternal Return will only let you equip one of them and is also dependent if your character can use them or not. The playable area of the game shrinks every 2 minutes, and during this time, supply drops will be distributed in their designated places that are marked on your map. Staying inside a restricted area of the map long enough will immediately kill you. You won't be able to enjoy the restricted area like in other Battle Royale games. All in all, it's a really refreshing take on the already oversaturated market of the Battle Royale genre and is a welcome addition to it. If you like the sound of everything that I just said, then feel free to click the game store page link in the description and try the game out yourself. I highly recommend the game especially for people that already like one of the genres that this game has, even more so if you like both of them. But take this recommendation with a grain of salt because, like I said, I'm not good at either genres and so obviously I suck ass in here as well.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
If you decided you want to hear more about the game, then stay for a little longer as we dive deeper. The visuals and models of the game aren't anything mind-blowing. Personally, I think it's more of a combination of League of Legends' bright, seamless character model and animation, and Dota 2's bleak, dark, and smooth texture and environment. Character models are pretty nice as well. Their attack animations are fun to look at, and the visual effects aren't obstructive to what's actually happening in the game. Visual cues are intuitive as well. You can pretty much know what a skill can do by just looking at the indicators that they make. The only problem I have right now is that the weapons that the characters are actually holding don't change when you upgrade them into higher tiers. Access will stay the same as the common ones we see lumberjacks in cartoons use, even though the much higher tiers of an axe looks like it's a Greek god relic. Dual swords always look like those two kitchen knives, things like that. But again, the game is still young. It's only 4 months old as of writing the script, and it's still in early access. Because of this not so gorgeous textures and models, the game only requires 3 GB of space in your hard drive. But then again, the game is still in early access, and I'm more than positive that the size will increase as developers continue to add more content. The game also has an average 13,000 daily concurrent players, and hopefully it grows more as the game gets more developed in the following years. I just want to take this moment to say that I will probably be mispronouncing all non-English names that I will be mentioning from here on out. Probably some English names as well that I'm not familiar with, so I apologize in advance if I butcher their names. As mentioned earlier, there are currently 22 playable characters available as of writing the script. Each character has their own unique design, background story, and skills as you'd expect from a MOBA. I haven't tried all of them yet, but just by looking at the video tutorial of their skills in their info pages, I can say that some of them are directly inspired by League of Legends. Chiara, for example, is akin to League's Morgana with how she could root enemies by linking to them and staying in a certain range. She's also a hybrid Kayle, as her ultimate skill transforms her into this angel-looking figure and gains some range attacks and attack speed, similar to League's Kayle. You also have Rotzi, I don't really know how to pronounce that name, that's really similar to Lucian and Samira. Her first skill deals damage in a straight line similar to Lucian's, but when it hits an enemy, her next movement will become a dash instead. So it's like a combination of a couple of Lucian's skill with a sprinkle of Kallista's auto-attack mechanics. Her second skill is just Samira's ultimate skill, kind of. Those are just some of the many examples of their similarities, but I wouldn't say that they blatantly copied League. After all, there are notable differences between the characters that we've just discussed and the champions from League that they might be based from. It isn't blatantly copying League like a certain mobile MOBA game. Characters are also decently voice acted, and as of writing the script, you can choose between English, Korean, or Japanese voiceovers. The thing I like about this is that they have different dialogues depending on your situation. If you're near a bitch, Jackie will comment about how she's planning on getting a 10, or if she's a dead body, she'd be kind of disappointed because she's a serial killer based on an actual person in London and she wants to be the one to kill said person. Guess the serial killer Jackie's based on. Meanwhile, Hyejin will pray for the souls of those she kills as she is a daughter of a generational shaman family. And yes, the characters do have backstories and the game itself has a lore of its own, but for the sake of this review video, I will not be touching any of that since people who are fans of this genre will typically care more about the gameplay rather than the story. If you want to know more about the lore, you can check out the official wiki of the game, which I will be linking down in the description. Each character can also use a handful of different weapons, and the number of weapons that they can use can differ from character to character. Every time you select a character from the character select screen, you will be given the choice of what weapon to start with, if applicable. And afterwards, before the match fully begins, you will be asked to choose a build path for your character, which we'll be tackling in the next section. As mentioned earlier, the game is a Battle Royale MOBA hybrid, so obviously you will need to pick a destination on the map on where you want to deploy or drop. But in this game, you don't drop. You just start at the area that you've chosen in a random location. You can also see how many people have chosen the same starting area. A red pin indicates an enemy while the blue pin indicates you. The number inside the red pin corresponds to the number of other players that are planning to start in that area. So you can pretty much anticipate if you have a chance of getting jumped on or jumping on another player at the start of the game. I don't know if the developers are planning on adding some extra stuff in this phase of the game, but as of writing the script, you just immediately begin the game. Also, I would just like to add a side note here that the players that I've been playing with so far don't like to fight at the start of the game. I don't know if this is because my MMR is still low or that's just the mindset of the general player base. You might also have noticed during the starting area selection that you have some item build paths on the right hand side of the screen. And each time you select a different one, the highlights on the map change as well. This is literally a build path where the game suggests you recommended areas to start from depending on what items you want to get and what areas to go next. Since the game can be really complex for the first-time players, this feature is a really nice touch. Of course, once you get familiarized with the game, you can make your own build path to follow and even share it with other people. This feature is what helped me memorize a path for Jackie with a dual sword build. I start in archery range to get a couple of rusty swords, 2 pieces of papers, a pair of shoes, an iron ball, and 3 pieces of nails. When I go to the school as my next area, I just need to find a pen and I will already have a max tier weapon for her. By the time I go to my 3rd recommended area, I have more or less a complete build for her. And the good thing about this is that the areas in the game will always have the same materials every time you play. The only difference per game session will be which container the materials can be found. If you look at the crafting screen, you can also click on materials to see which areas they can be found on, lessening the amount of time needed to check every container in an area. And even when you're just walking around in the area, the game tells you what materials you can find from containers on the right-hand side of the screen. All areas in the game also offer security consoles where, if you interact with it, lets you see through the fog of war in certain places of the area. Anyone can interact with this console and you won't lose your vision of the places even if another player interacts with it. Meanwhile, select areas have hyperloops in the form of a telephone booth which lets you teleport anywhere in the map. This is a really nice feature to zip around anywhere quickly. The icon for the hyperloop in the map is 2 greater than symbols enclosed in a circle. During your exploration of the map, you will also come across wild animals. If you've played a MOBA before, these are the neutral mobs of the game and you can kill them for materials that you can only get from them, such as meat, leather, and gemstones for some reason, but not XP. Instead, it will give you mastery points for your current weapon and your hunt level. Every time you gain mastery points, you gain XP. If you've played any Elder Scrolls game, you know what I'm talking about. You indirectly level up based on the different aspects of your characters. So obviously, most actions that you do in this game will give you mastery points for those specific stats, which in turn give you player XP to level up. Walking from area to area gives you mastery for move, searching containers give mastery for searching, even crafting equipment give you mastery for, you guessed it, crafting. You can check your stats in the mastery section just below your character's portrait or by pressing the letter V on your keyboard. This intricate system warrants its own video, so I won't expound on it further in this video. Anyways, fighting enemies will generate noise, quite literally. You will know if someone is in your immediate vicinity as your map will create warning indicator. This happens when you or other players fight neutral mobs or other players in the area, or open certain containers or interact with certain objects. But these are the only actions that trigger the warning indicator. Things like footstep or crafting won't create a warning indicator on the map, but they will still be physically heard if a player is close enough. General combat pretty much plays out like a standard MOBA, minus, again, the team mobs and the turrets. You have your auto attacks, 3 basic skills, 1 ultimate skill, and a passive skill. As usual, skills requires resources to cast. In this game's case, you need SP to do so. However, the game adds another skill for the players to use, and that is weapon skills. As the name suggests, weapon skills depend on what weapon your character is using. These skills don't cost any SP to cast, but they generally have long cooldowns. Since there are characters that can use more than one type of weapon, it adds more dynamic to the overall playstyle of characters. If you're wounded after a battle, healing doesn't require spending your health potions or items. The game has a rest feature that you can typically find in MMORPGs. Of course, you can only rest while not in combat, and you will need to wait 3 seconds after getting out of combat before you can rest. This restores your health and SP over time, so do not get discouraged in fighting neutral mobs you find. Well, just make sure you're confident that you can beat the mob. Since this is also a Battle Royale game, the playable area will slowly decrease over time. However, the circle isn't even a circle. The game randomly selects areas to be restricted every 2 minutes. An area that's going to be restricted will be highlighted orange on the map, and will turn red once it gets fully restricted. Players are given a total of 30 seconds to get out of a restricted area. If the timer reaches 0, you will die instantly. No reduce your health until you die kind of stuff like in typical Battle Royale games. The twist with this timer as well is that it doesn't reset when you get inside a safe zone. If your 30-second timer went down to 15 seconds because you fap around in a restricted area, you're stuck with that 15 seconds and will continue to count down from there when you enter a restricted area again. So be sure to calculate how much time you will be spending in a restricted area. You can't just camp there and chug health potions. When the last area gets restricted, a small perimeter around the security console of that area will be the safe zone until one player becomes victorious. You can play solo with a friend or a whole squad. Sadly, I have only played solo as of yet, and that's not because I don't have friends. They just don't have time to play. I swear. Anyways, like discussed earlier, you don't hunt for weapons in this game, but rather you hunt for materials to upgrade your starting weapon and craft other equipment and hoping to level up your character. That and the other aforementioned things are what separate this game from other Battle Royales. There's so much less RNG involved, item spawns are fixed, you know how many other players are in your starting area, and you don't have to get lucky to get good weapons and equipment. You also always know where the last safe zone would be since it would always be the security console of that area. The game also doesn't really promote camping in just one place once you have maxed your equipment, since you still need to maintain your character's level. Most of the time, you'd get max tier equipment for all your equipment slots by the time you're level 13. The next thing you might be thinking of is just to camp the game out and let other people kill each other, like your usual Battle Royale. If you do that in this game, you will get under-leveled, which lowers your chance of winning duels, or worse, you will lose the chance of winning the entire match. Overall, I really like the basic gameplay loop of the game since it deviates from the usual Battle Royale formula and adds some unique stuff into it. The game, as I've said countless times, is still in early access, so I will cut this section short and not be nitpicky. The obvious flaw that anyone can immediately notice is balancing issues. Some characters are just so broken to play as or against with. Meanwhile, there are some characters that just can't seem to hold their ground against other characters. Again, I would like to say that this is all coming from the perspective of a person that has only ever played solo matches and is generally shit at the two genres that this game has, so you might as well take this whole thing with a spoonful of salt. I guess matchmaking can also be one of the problems of the game, considering there are only 13,000 concurrent players and who knows from where they are playing. There was a time when I got matched with the same person twice in a row, so if you're playing from a region where this game is not that popular, it might take quite a while to start the game, or your game might be filled with bots. This next point may be region related, but I see a handful of players teaming up in solo queue. You know how it goes, they stay together, they don't kill each other, and it's pretty obvious that they're actually looking out for each other. Just take a look at this clip for example.
no capital hurt. Well, this is my hardship.
If that is not teaming up, then I don't know what is. But yeah, that's pretty much all I can say when it comes to the game's problems. All other problems like performance optimization and balancing issues, as I've mentioned earlier, should be fixed in the future updates. In conclusion, the game is fun to play for an early access and a really refreshing take on the Battle Royale genre. Hopefully, it becomes even more fun once it's actually properly released. I really just can't believe that this hasn't been talked about anywhere, or at least as far as I'm aware of. So hopefully, if you've stumbled upon this video and haven't heard of this game yet, you'd give it a try. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed this one, be sure to hit that like button, and if you want to see more like this, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much once again, and I'll see you in the next video.